everybody. I am Dr. Grace Lorden, and you are listening to Bonus Content for Workforce, a podcast that blends behavioral science insights with practical insights to help you understand better what's happening in your world of work. Recently, we had an episode of Perfectionism, and I met Charly Haversat, a reformed perfectionist. And in this bonus content, Charly is telling you how you could also become a reformed perfectionist, let go, and understand that sometimes good really is good enough. Let's hear what Charly has to say.
Charly, that you're a reformed perfectionist. Can you tell us something about your journey to discovering that you yourself were a perfectionist?
I think part of it is, and it was interesting before we started recording, you talked about well-being. My journey to discovering I was a perfectionist and then letting go of that was really based on the fact that I was being super hard on myself and in some cases unrealistic about what my next steps were. So as an example, I used to be a professional athlete, and when I was competing, I ran, the 5 and 10,000. When I was competing, this concept that every race would be better than the previous race, it's just not realistic. That's not how progress is achieved, especially from an athletics perspective. The idea that anything that I'm doing now would be, that there would always be quality improvement built into it. It's not realistic, and it's also not healthy. It's not only putting stressors on myself, but it's putting a huge amount of stress on the people who are supporting me as I'm trying to kind of reach those goals.
How did you manage to convert from being a perfectionist to being a reformed perfectionist?
Great question. In hindsight, my answer today probably would be different than it was 5 years ago. I think parenthood really helped push that envelope. When you have children, you realize the concept of good enough. Like, I don't need everything to be perfect. I don't need to be the mother that's bringing the perfect cupcakes to school. I don't need to have, the perfect kid. And not only that, but I don't want that. So I think in that case, my daughter is now 32. And after, a couple of years of parenting, I realized that perfectionism had to go by the wayside.
So if there was somebody who's listening today who identifies with being a perfectionist and wants to be a reformed perfectionist, are there any kind of tips you would give them to help them on their journey?
Tips I would give folks, one, ask yourself why. Quite often I find, and I still find myself doing it. I'm actually putting on a big conference today, and we, excuse me, have like 300 people coming to this conference, and got a late breaking change in the materials that are going to be presented in about 2 hours. And as we were looking at facilitating getting that change made, there's going to be a little bit of a technical glitch, and then I realized it didn't matter. So in terms of tips, biggest question is focus. First question I ask myself is, why is it important that this thing I'm about to do is perfect? And then as I start unpacking that, it's easier to kind of let go of why, because most often it's something unrealistic and something unattainable.
So when I'm going through the thought experiment of the why, should I be dividing what I'm about to do into good enough is okay in this scenario versus, yes, this is a moment that I aim for excellence?
It's interesting that you say that, because I also have to wonder if excellence can't be good enough. Can't you do both at the same time? The reason I was thinking about this is a couple of examples over the past couple of weeks and months. And I don't know if you're a Ted Lasso fan or not.
I am.
But the last, yeah. So, well, I don't want to do spoiler alerts. Have you seen the last episode?
Yes, you can spoil.
Okay, good.
You can spoil.
Okay, yeah. So the part that really intrigued me in the episode was their discussion about the word perfect and what constitutes perfectionism.
Yeah.
And you remember they spent actually a couple of minutes in that last episode. And so the team is obviously striving for excellence. They're striving for, a perfect season. But I really, really appreciated the focus in that episode about the fact that they also realized, the coaching team or the coaching staff realized that excellence is a process, and it's not going to happen in one day or 1 month or 1 year. And so again, going back to the whole tips, the question I often ask myself is am I looking for perfection for this thing I'm about to do because I need it now, or is this a tool or a step that I'm going to be using to building a process or making something better in the long run?
I like that because it kind of divides what you're doing into these things that are one shot, where you really only get one shot at something, like buying a house, for example. It's very hard to unwind that transaction, versus things that you need to
Right.
build up over time, athletic prowess, research, kind of, there's so many other examples that I could think about. So I think that's a really good example.
Yep. Well, and the other thing is that I was also intrigued by the notion of creativity and innovation and how perfection can actually stifle that. But one of the things, again, going back to the tips of how can I like ask myself, am I focusing on the right end goal for this moment in time? I look at creativity and innovation is that, again, these are all processes. And I had a pretty spirited conversation with somebody about 3 or 4 years ago that if we don't focus on perfect, are we not holding ourselves to high standards? Um, and I think the answer can be yes, we are, and that at some point you might get a perfect result, but that they say the journey is the point, not the end state. And I think that sometimes if I'm constantly focusing on what the end looks like, I'm missing the nice steps along the way.